ship back up to Combat Alert Alpha. I want everyone at their station.
Men, keep your eyes downrange, fingers on your triggers, and we all go home in one piece. Am I right, Marine?
Sir, yes, sir!
Lock and load your weapons. Let's be ready to move. Good luck, Master.
Now would be a very good time to leave.
For this gang, going for real safety.
What is that thing, Lieutenant?
Hell if I know. We're landing on it. Damn! Air brake failure. Wi-Fi impact!
Chief, can you hear me?
Affirmative. Echo 419 inbound.
The Covenant presence here is stronger than I anticipated. They seem to have the entire region secured.
The ring has some kind of deep religious significance.
They call it Halo.
They believe that Halo is some kind of weapon, one with vast, unimaginable power.
If Halo is a weapon, and the Covenant gain control of it, they'll use it against us and wipe out the entire human race.
That's not going to happen.
Give him hell, Marine.
Get out of here before it's too late!
I'm Joe Fielder. I'm the site director of GameSpot. I'm here today to talk to you about Halo from Bungie. You might have seen some of the things I've written about Halo in the past. I've written a few columns, one of which I talked about how when I first got the game, I played it for about 10 hours straight. I got the game about 8 o'clock at night, started playing, played till 6 o'clock in the morning, and the next night played from about midnight to 6 in the morning. It's one of those games that compels you to pull all-nighters. It's that good. People who have been looking for the last few years for a game as good as Half-Life or Rare's GoldenEye 007 will be pretty pleased to learn that they don't really need to look anymore. It's here. It's Halo.
Oh no! Oh no!
You play Halo through the eyes of a character called the Master Chief. He's kind of this enigmatic cyborg commando who you never really learn too much about, but whom everyone in the game seems to know of, and they deal with very reverentially. You'll come up to a group of Marines, and they'll start saying things like, hey, it's Mark V. It's taller than I thought, or hey, we were worried until you showed up, sir. You start the game, you're awakened out of cryosleep on a ship that's been boarded by Covenant forces. The Covenant are an alien race that Earth forces have come into conflict with, and your ship has traveled to this artificial ring-shaped planet called Halo, where the Covenant are hunting for this mysterious artifact. Maybe it's a weapon, and probably a weapon, could be a weapon. You don't want it to fall into their hands, and that's why you're there.
What is that thing, Lieutenant?
Hell if I know. We're landing on it.
You're on him! She's been hit!
One of the ways that Halo is different from other first-person shooters is that it only allows you to carry 2 weapons at the same time. That's something that I think that for years, game players have probably thought, that sort of realism would detract from a first-person shooter. In the past, you've always been able to carry, a huge rocket launcher, a machine gun, and so on and so forth, and probably 12 weapons. In this, it adds a really nice strategic element. Necessity will eventually teach you that every single weapon in the game has positive and minus traits. The pistol that you start off with is probably the most basic weapon in the game, but it has a scope so that if you're fighting enemies who like to hide behind rocks and shoot at you just out of your range, you're able to focus in and shoot at them with some degree of accuracy. Likewise, there are weapons like the standard rifle that work really well against people who don't have energy shields. But if an enemy does have a force field, you'll really need to have something like a plasma rifle in order for that to be effective. Not surprisingly, the computer AI gives the game a lot of replay value. You could play through the same sections of the game and multiple times and not have the same things happen twice. The combat in Halo really never gets old because the enemy AI is so smart that enemies will react many different ways depending on a situation. If there's a cannon or a vehicle nearby, they might hop into it. If they're running low on shields, they might hide behind a rock or throw a grenade over at you. They might rush you if they're just really close to death and try to bludgeon you to death with the butt of their rifle. And your Marine allies in the game are just as smart. There are even times when you'll find yourself assisting them instead of them assisting you.
Captain Keyes.
Good to see you, Master Chief. Things aren't going well.
Halo is a really stunning looking game. There are a lot of big levels, huge draw distances, and they're just full of eye candy in many cases. If you walk up to a Marine, you'll see that there's his visor on his helmet reflects light, and there's a lot of little neat things like that. One of only a few possible complaints that people could really have about the graphics in Halo is that the frame rate is 30 frames per second. Now, if you are a big fan of GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, you probably won't even notice. You probably won't skip a beat. But if you've been playing Quake 3 Arena nonstop, for the last few years, you'll probably be searching your controller constantly for a run button throughout that. The positive side of 30 frames per second is there could be multiple enemies on screen. There could be explosions. There could be Banshee attack craft flying through, and it'll still be a rock solid 30 frames per second, albeit a little bit slower in multiplayer. As in Rare's Perfect Dark, you can play through the entire game in co-op split screen mode with a buddy. If so one person dies in the game, then they respawn once you kind of back up and get out of combat, or else if you finish the fight. It's a really neat way of playing the game the second or third time you play through it. It's a real fun experience, providing cover for a friend, or having somebody watch your back as well. Halo's other multiplayer modes aren't quite as strong as the single-player mode or the two-player co-op. It's basically because of the omission of computer-controlled foes or allies to kind of round out the experience. You can play the game with 4 people on one screen through split screen, and there are a variety of maps and different modes you can play with, but most of them seem to be tailored towards the other way you can play the multiplayer, which is by hooking up several Xboxes, through Link or LAN, and you can have up to 16 people playing at one time. It's really amazing to play the game in that way. Even still, it's hard to say enough good things about Halo. It's one of those games that really manages to transcend its genre. It's not only a good first-person shooter, it's a good game, period. Fans of shooters like Half-Life, like GoldenEye, even the Marathon series, pretty much any major single-player first-person shooter should really enjoy the game, as should anyone. Besides being easily the best game of the Xbox launch, it's one of the best first-person shooters ever on any platform.
Halo 2 has been one of the most highly anticipated games probably ever because the original game was so outstanding. It is a large part of why the Xbox has been so successful. It was truly the Xbox's original killer app, and it made good on its promises by having just this really amazing action and these really great vehicles along with the on-foot action and a multiplayer that kept people playing for long after they finished the campaign. So the story is really what gripped people in the original Halo. The multiplayer kept them coming back up until now. Halo 2 has to make good on all this stuff, and for the most part it does. Really, once again, plays outstanding. It plays like hardly any first-person shooters out there, just in terms of the really minor points of the gameplay. Just subtle things about how it work very, very well. It's a lot more fun to play than most other shooters, and it just delivers a lot of these exciting moments time and time again, both when you're playing online and when you're playing in co-op mode and when you're playing solo. With that said, the game has a few shortcomings, especially in its story. The story ends with a cliffhanger ending that hits you like a freight truck and will probably leave you sorely disappointed. Especially if you get to that ending in the first sitting, which is possible if you're kind of a rabid Halo fan and are willing to sit there for 8 or 10 hours in one stretch to get through the campaign. So it's pretty short on top of having a story that's pretty unfulfilling. So does that make Halo 2 a bad game? Of course it doesn't. The gameplay is what matters, and it plays really spectacularly, and it has this online mode that's going to keep you coming back for as long as it takes until, who knows, the next Halo game finally rolls around. It has the legs, it has the excellent graphics and the really amazing audio, but it also has these two kind of noticeable warts to keep it from the sheer perfection that some sort of expected of this game, and after how long it's been in development. Halo 2's campaign really isn't that different from that of the first game. It has everything about Halo's campaign that was great, and everything about Halo's campaign that wasn't so great. Most people remember Halo's campaign because it offered these really dynamic battles against this really smart AI. The enemies you'll be fighting against will dodge around, they'll use cover, they'll run away to regroup, they'll try to flank you, all kinds of stuff like that. So even if you have to replay the same fight over and over again, it still tends to be pretty different each time you try it, especially since there tend to be tons of weapons lying around, so you can try to take advantage of different tactical situations, and you'll often have friendly Marines fighting alongside you and their vehicles flying around, so things are blowing up, things are crazy, and things are exciting and a lot of fun, especially since you've got your good old melee attacks, a personal favorite of mine, so you can always clobber a foe when you're right next to him, and that'll often do him in. Then again, Halo had these certain problems, such as how the level design started to become very repetitive and very monotonous after a while, to the point where it could be pretty confusing. These things are true of Halo 2's campaign also. There are certain stretches that get to be a little tedious as far as, the scenery is concerned. The action itself is still totally top-notch from the beginning to the bitter end, but you're not going to be seeing, tons of spectacular scenery the whole time. And in fact, the scenery itself, as well as most of the enemies you'll be fighting against, are pretty much similar to those of the original Halo. So the game takes an if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach, and for the most part, that's a very good thing because Halo, the original game, has yet to be surpassed. Of course, Halo 2 does have some new bits. It's not just a total rehash of the first one. Early on, you'll be defending Earth from the Covenant, which is pretty impressive. I mean, you'll be running through the streets, sometimes in a warthog, sometimes at the turret of a warthog, taking down droves of Covenant. Lots of them are riding in ghosts this time, and it's just a pretty exciting sequence, especially since there are lots of nasty snipers around trying to pick you off. And it's really an amazing setup, and it makes you think that Halo 2 is going to stay there. But in fact, the game takes you away from Earth pretty early on, and you spend most of the game in different places, and in fact not focusing on the Master Chief's adventures. Instead, the game really includes a lot of material about the Covenant, and now it sort of paints the story from the Covenant's perspective in addition to the human perspective, where you'll get to learn a lot about the trials and tribulations of the Covenant and some of their political upheavals and what have you. So there's this big secondary part of the storyline now, and these enemies that you've been indiscriminately killing in the original Halo are now supposed to be these sort of sympathetic creatures that are, in the wrong war or something like that. So it's sort of a weird twist. It's not necessarily something that Halo fans are going to like very much, because they just want to focus on the killing of the Covenant and so forth, as opposed to on their, misunderstandings. And again, since the story ends on sort of a dour note, all in all, the campaign isn't as satisfying as that of the original game, and might leave you pretty frustrated. As mentioned, though, actually playing the campaign is a whole lot of fun, since you'll be facing off against these tough enemies the whole time. From a technical standpoint, the campaign is quite impressive. There's basically no loading time at all, which is pretty cool. In the previous Halo, there were some occasional loading times in between the main chapters, but here they're totally hidden. Instead, you just get these split-second pauses every now and then, and in between these miles and miles of combat zones. Saving and loading is also handled extremely well. It's just totally transparent. If you die, you just pop back in, and basically you never have to manually save the game. You could just concentrate on the action. This is all the more reason why you might just blow through the campaign in 1 or 2 sittings. As for the AI, as mentioned, it's as impressive as ever, because the enemy just makes for a dynamic and rather intelligent opponent. So even though the game isn't too tough, you can always retreat and recharge your energy shields or try a different tactic or something like that. The enemy just keeps you guessing, and it keeps you entertained as you're trying to outsmart it. The AI does have a couple of flukes, such as how you'll notice that when it's in the driver's seat of vehicles, it can drive quite poorly at times. It'll run into walls and do some crazy stuff like that. And the friendly Marines you'll be fighting with don't help you a whole lot. But still, all in all, the artificial intelligence remains a highlight of Halo 2. It's too bad that you can't play the multiplayer modes with AI-controlled bots, because it seems like, with just a little more adjustment, you could have been fighting against these guys practicing in some of the multiplayer modes. There are some key differences in Halo 2's gameplay compared to the first one. There are things like how your jump is higher and floatier this time around. You don't suffer any damage from falling anymore. These are kind of subtle tweaks. There's also no longer a health meter to worry about, which sounds like it's kind of a crazy change, but it's actually a really good thing. It means that unlike in the original game, you just never have to worry about finding health packs. All you have to worry about are your shields. So for the most part, you're either at full health or you're about to die. It makes sort of a simpler approach to some of the sequences, and it makes you not have to run around, looking for health packs in corners or annoying things like that. One of the other big changes is that it's now possible to dual wield some of the weapons that are smaller. This isn't exactly an original feature. It's been done back since Red Faction 2 and games like that, but Halo 2 implements it very well, both in single player and multiplayer. When you're dual wielding, of course, you can independently fire your weapons using the left and right triggers, and this gives you double the stopping power. At the same time, it means that you can't throw grenades, which, if you've played Halo, those are really effective. And it also means you can't execute your melee attack without dropping the offhand weapon first. So as a result, dual wielding is really quite well balanced. It's very useful in certain cases, but in other cases you don't want to use it, and of course with some of the bigger weapons, you can't use it. As for Halo 2's vehicles, they're mostly pretty much the same as those of the original game. You'll find the Warthog and the Ghost and the Banshee, all those are back here, and they're usable in single player and multiplayer. They've all undergone some enhancements, though, which makes them freshened up a bit, not seem like the same old thing. The Warthog can now execute power slides for even more slippery turns, and the Ghost has an afterburner now, so it can ram guys down, and is probably the most fun to drive vehicle now. It's really quite strong in multiplayer, since you can just run people over if the double plasma guns aren't enough. The vehicles can sure seem powerful, but both in the single-player game and the multiplayer game, you can hijack them if they're posing too much of a problem and if your opponent isn't very, very careful. Basically, you just need to get right up close to the side of the vehicle. You can't do it from the front because they're going to be trying to blow you away. And you hit X and you toss the pilot out and you get in, and hopefully you then proceed to run him down or something like that. The hijacking of the vehicles is probably the single greatest addition to Halo 2's gameplay. It doesn't dominate the game, but it's something that helps equalize the vehicles, and it gives you a way to handle them when you're on foot. And it also makes for some really satisfying moments at times, like when you maybe jack a guy in a high-flying Banshee and cause him to drop into a bottomless pit, or other cool stuff like that. Halo 2 also features a number of new weapons not found in the original game. Most of the original weapons do return, although there are a few absences, such as the good old assault rifle from the original Halo, Rest Its Soul. The most exciting of the new weapons is the energy sword, which some of the Covenant used to make your life miserable in the first game, but now you get to use yourself. You'll get to test all these out, both in the campaign and in the multiplayer, and of course in the game's two-player co-op mode, which can be tremendously fun as in the first Halo. But you can't play it online, you can't play it over System Link for whatever reason. You could only play it on the same console. It's still very, very entertaining, especially at the higher levels of difficulty where there are more bad guys and you really do need your partner there to help see you through some of the toughest fights. The co-op mode, of course, gives good reason to go back into the campaign for multiple go-rounds. So even though, the story isn't going to wow you in the end, you'll want to revisit the campaign probably multiple times when you factor in the difficulty settings and all that stuff. Like the original, Halo 2 supports up to 16 players in its multiplayer modes, though most people never got to experience the original game's full-scale multiplayer action. They're limited to the 4-player multiplayer on a single system, since setting up a System Link game wasn't exactly practical, and Xbox Live didn't actually exist at that time. Obviously, the ability to play Halo Online changes everything, and frankly, it's probably the best reason to get Halo 2. It's the most satisfying aspect of the game, and simply put, this is one of the best multiplayer shooter experiences around right now on any platform. Though the PC is home to some of the best multiplayer shooters, this multiplayer implementation stands tall even against that competition, so it's easily better than what you've got on most consoles right now. There's 7 different multiplayer modes. Some of the favorites from Halo return, like Slayer and Capture the Flag and Oddball, and there's some new ones as well, like Territories. Then within each of these 7 different modes, there are a whole bunch of different variants, sometimes about half a dozen or so. So, for example, with Slayer, which is Halo 2's deathmatch equivalent, you could play swords-only matches, or matches where some of the players can be invisible and things like that. So you could tweak out all the different modes of play and then apply them to any of the game's different maps. There are about a dozen maps that ship with Halo 2. This adds up to a whole bunch of different variety, and you could play it, with any number of players and any combination, tweak out all the rules, do all that stuff. You could customize this multiplayer action to whatever you want it to be. So that creates a lot of variety, but at the same time it creates some combinations that aren't going to be that much fun. For example, if you try a 4-player Capture the Flag match on a very large map, you might not have that much fun because there's just too much empty space. But chances are you're going to find some combinations that really suit you, and you can set up Xbox Live so that it only throws you into matches like that. And the whole Xbox Live implementation is just handled pretty slickly. There's some pretty cool features here, like how you can create a party online so that you don't just have to jump into a match on your own. If you have several people on your friends list that you regularly play with, you could kind of roll together in between different game sessions and hopefully end up on the same team or just keep fighting against each other. It's great that Halo 2 has all these different modes of play, but it's the actual action itself that's so much fun and the reason why you'll keep coming back to this multiplayer if that's what floats your boat. But basically, it just gives you really good feedback the whole time. The game feels just right. It gets the little details down right that a lot of other shooters mess up or don't take into consideration. You'll see very noticeable feedback when you're hitting your target, when you yourself are getting hit, when you need to reload, when you're losing a match, when you're winning a match, when your team needs help, all kinds of things like that. The game has these subtle little interface features that just make it very easy to understand what's going on in a match, even if you've jumped right in. So you don't need to feel like you're a big liability to your team as you're just learning to play the game. You could really just pick up and start playing, especially if you're experienced with Halo already. There isn't much of a learning curve here, provided that you're used to first-person shooters. The graphics aren't quite as good as maybe you'd hope. They've got some rather rough edges. Like you'll see textures kind of pop in from low res to high res, and the cutscenes in the campaign are actually pretty ugly. But for the most part, the game looks superb. Like the explosions of the vehicles in multiplayer, the location-based damage on the vehicles, and just the action itself, the animations, the physics, all this stuff. The game looks really excellent when you're playing it, as opposed to just kind of watching cutscenes or looking at some of the other frills. The audio is actually quite a bit better than the graphics overall. All the weapons just sound like they have a real punch to them, or sound distinctive, and you get a nice feedback on the controller as well to give you some rumble when you're firing away with them. There's excellent voice acting throughout the campaign, and the music is really sort of the crowning jewel of the audio performance, because it just kicks in at just the right moments during the campaign and makes the whole thing seem very epic and dramatic. So what can I say? Halo 2 is awesome. It's a spectacular game. It's tons of fun to play. It's especially fun to play online. It's probably the single greatest online console game ever, and it delivers for the most part on its promises by extending what was great about Halo and adding to it in ways that aren't drastic but are meaningful and well implemented and make this game, marginally at least, more fun to play than the original. With all that said, the game isn't perfect. I hate to break it to you, but it just ain't. There are things about the story that could have been a lot better, and the campaign could have been longer easily. There are a lot of people that, with all due respect to the multiplayer, they want the single-player experience. Halo had such a great story, and the sequel is very interesting in and of itself, but it just doesn't have the follow-through that the original one did. But you can just keep going back in here and replaying both the single player and, of course, the multiplayer portion. And the whole thing is presented so well that it's just extremely fun to play, and it is, in fact, the must-have Xbox game that everyone was hoping it would be. And that says a whole lot for it. It's very few games that manage to succeed at this level.
Okay, let's just get it out of the way right here. Halo 2 was a hot game in a lot of ways, but it was hard not to be disappointed by the way it ended. The campaign mode just left you with this huge cliffhanger, didn't really resolve anything. In that sense, it was fairly disappointing. Halo 3 does not have that problem. Bungie's kind of said all along they want to tell a trilogy and have a story arc, and by gum, that's exactly what they did. In a lot of ways, Halo 3 follows up on what Halo 2 did and doesn't really change the formula, but then in other ways feels completely different, and that's a delicate balancing act that kind of permeates every aspect of the game. Considering that the tagline for Halo 3 has been "Finish the fight" all along, it's no surprise that that's really kind of what this game is about. It picks up immediately following the events of Halo 2, and there are some interesting and unique twists to the story, and it provides a really good sense of closure. But on top of that, and this is where it becomes a delicate balancing act, it makes you look forward to what could possibly be next after this. So it's a really interesting balance between solving all these issues and leaving you with something new to look forward to, and that's really awesome. The events of Halo 3 are such that they actually managed to make the ending of Halo 2 make sense, and that in and of itself is a pretty incredible feat.
Chief, wait! The Arbiter's with us!
Come on now. We've got enough to worry about without you two trying to kill each other.
The game's solo mode will take you through 9 chapters as you experience this story, and it's available in 4 different difficulty levels. The heroic difficulty is the second hardest, and it's probably the most satisfying if you've been playing Halo in the past, or really if you're comfortable playing any other console-based first-person shooter. The campaign's interesting because it's nicely varied. If you play previous Halo games, you probably have noticed the way that a lot of the on-foot action is broken up by lengthy vehicle sequences, and you'll see that stuff here as well. You also see a good variety of environments. You get to see like jungle settings, desert, snow, and more mechanical stuff, and more organic-looking creepy stuff. These different locations look really nice. It really helps immerse you in the world of the game. If you've played previous Halo games, you're going to feel right at home in Halo 3 because things like the movement speed and the way the game offers light tactical considerations between firing your weapons or throwing grenades or running up and using a melee attack, all that stuff is still basically the same. But that's not to say it's identical. You're going to see new weapons and new vehicles. Some of the new weapons include a flamethrower, which actually pulls out to a third-person perspective, and so you kind of move a little slower while you have it and use that to just kind of burn everything in your path. The Spiker, which is an automatic weapon that you can dual wield that really tears guys up. You just get up close, whap, 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 and you can really take guys down fast with one of those. That's a lot of fun to use. But probably not as fun as the Gravity Hammer, which is this big brute weapon. You saw it in Halo 2, but couldn't use it. And now you can run up and you just slam the ground with it, and it'll do damage to things around you. But if you manage to connect with something, you'll just blast those dudes apart. And that makes it really satisfying to use both when you're playing alone and playing in multiplayer.
Damn you!
Of course, equipment is new to Halo 3. You can pick up items and kind of lob them out like grenades, but they have different effects. The most dramatic of these is probably the bubble shield. When you drop it, it creates a shield that no bullets or explosions can get through, but you can walk right through it in and out. So there's a lot of cool things with that, but there's more than just the bubble shield. There are things like the power drainer that'll drain the shields and actually stop vehicles dead in their tracks if they run into the field that it emits. There's also one that'll recharge shields if you're standing close to it, gravity lifts, and things of that nature. These different pieces of equipment probably factor more into the multiplayer than the single player. The AI on the higher settings will attempt to use equipment, but it seems like they just kind of will lob them out at random and not really use them all that strategically. In multiplayer, it's probably a little more strategic and a little more interesting. Some of the new vehicles include vehicles like the Brute Prowler, which is a two-man kind of tank with skids on the front of it and a turret, and you'll see other new kind of Brute vehicles, as well as a lot of the old vehicles, and that goes double for the weapons. You definitely see the weapons that you have come to expect to see in the series, the assault rifle, the battle rifle. There's a really good mix of old and new as far as the gameplay is concerned.
They're getting
Previous Halo games have allowed you to play co-op with another player locally, and they've changed that here in Halo 3. Now up to 4 players can play the game through this 9-chapter campaign cooperatively, and on top of that you can do it online over Xbox Live. This is a huge addition to the game that really gives it some additional legs. By being able to play it online, being able to chop it up however you want, and play whatever chapters you want with up to 3 other players, it becomes really, really more exciting.
I do without it.
You can also further modify the way you play the game in this co-op mode with the addition of skulls. Now, skulls have appeared in previous games, and here they're a little more fleshed out, maybe a little more meaningful. Skulls are just hidden around the levels, and you find them and pick them up, and then you're holding this skull, and you actually bash dudes with it, and that's pretty cool. But what the skulls really do is unlock additional gameplay tweaks that kind of mutate the gameplay. You'll find skulls that'll make the enemies much more difficult to kill, kind of give them a health bonus. There's another skull that removes the HUD and actually stops drawing your weapon. It's called Blind. So a lot of these skulls are designed to make the game a little more difficult. In addition to co-op, you can play multiplayer with up to 16 players in a match, and this is largely the same as what you saw in the multiplayer beta earlier this year, which of course wasn't dramatically different from Halo 2. They stuck with the formula that definitely works. You can play on 11 maps in plenty of different modes. There's a lot to do online. And that's just talking about the built-in game types. This is where we get into the aspects of Halo 3 that are really customizable, that really take it beyond what Halo 2 did. Of course, you could do some customization in Halo 2, but here they've added a lot more to it. You know, you can set the gravity, you can set the game speed, you can designate leaders on each team that have different traits than the standard players. So you can create all these different game types and save them, and also very easily share them with friends. The multiplayer definitely has a lot of longevity to it. They really went the extra mile here and included a ton of new features that are really exciting. An entirely new addition to Halo 3 is the inclusion of Forge mode. And on the surface, Forge doesn't really sound like much. It's a map editor, but it's a map editor that doesn't actually allow you to edit the geometry of the levels. So you can't sit there and make a hill bigger or create your own level from scratch like you could on a standard kind of PC level editor. Instead, it lets you move around the objects that are in a level and affect placement of things like spawn points, weapons, or even obstacles. But this is actually one of the most exciting additions to the game, and it really kind of comes back to how much you put into the game, and how much you put into Forge mode is directly proportional to how much you'll get out of it. Because there are some really weird and cool things you can do in Forge mode that probably aren't even really what the developers intended, but it's really good for kind of making up your own little fun side games and just doing a lot of weird stuff. If you're willing to kind of get creative with this stuff and mess around with your friends and play around with this stuff, you'll probably have a lot of unintentional fun just coming up with crazy things. And that's really powerful and a really exciting part of Halo 3 from something that on the surface doesn't really seem like that much at all. Of course, when something rad does happen, you can actually save it and replay it thanks to the saved films feature. How this works is anytime you're in any session, if it's a campaign level, if you're playing co-op, if you're playing multiplayer, if you're having a Forge session, it'll be saved to a list of recent films. You can then take these and save them more permanently. And then you can go in and watch them. You can actually zoom around. In the case of like a single player level, you can actually zoom around the whole level and look for skulls. All this combines to form a set of the game that you can share with other players. And you can actually take these items and share them publicly. And this includes not only saved films, but also the custom game types that you come up with, as well as the Forge map configurations that you save. You can take this stuff, you can set it to be publicly available, and then you'll actually be able to go to Bungie's website where they're going to have different mechanisms for you to see this stuff. And you can actually log into their site and actually just click a button right there that says, hey, I want this. And then next time you turn on your 360, it'll actually download it to your system and you'll be able to play around with that. It's really one of those things that, again, on the surface doesn't really sound like much, but when you factor in all of the different weird things you can do in Halo 3, being able to share that stuff with other players on a wide scale is pretty awesome.
Damn you all!
So on the surface, Halo 3 isn't really that much different from what you saw in Halo 2. It's got a campaign, it's got a multiplayer mode, and then there's this weird Forge stuff and save films that really don't seem like that big of a deal. But when you roll all this stuff together and include online co-op and all the weird stuff you'll be able to do with Forge and all the ways you'll be able to share it with the world and with your friends, it really feels like a dramatically different game and a dramatically bigger game. It comes together in an amazing package that is definitely one of the year's best.
At the end of Halo 3, developer Bungie left Master Chief and Cortana adrift in a derelict ship, their fates uncertain. 2 Halo games later, Bungie bid farewell to the franchise, and still Chief and Cortana drifted. Now a new developer, 343 Industries, has taken over all things Halo and called the duo back from deep space for Halo 4. So what does Halo look like under new management? Visually, better than ever. From grand vistas to jungle clearings, the environments pop with detail. And the excellent artistic design that makes human, Covenant, and Forerunner architecture so instantly recognizable is on display once more, helping to create a cohesive sci-fi world. It's a world you know if you're familiar with the initial Halo trilogy, and Halo 4 uses the series past as a springboard, not a crutch. From the striking opening cutscene, it's clear that humanity is swept up in a new galactic initiative, and Master Chief's 4-year hiatus in cryosleep leads to an uneasy reunion. By the time you see another human, Chief and Cortana have stumbled upon a dire threat to humanity's existence, one that provides the series with its first proper villain, and whose roots in vague Forerunner mythology soon come into frightening focus. These galactic machinations are dramatic and intriguing, but the most engrossing drama of Halo 4 takes place between Master Chief and Cortana.
I was put into service 8 years ago. AIs deteriorate after 7.
Everyone's favorite artificial intelligence is nearing her expiration date, forcing these two all but invincible characters to face the prospect of death in a way they never really have. Great voice acting and animation underscore this emotional process, helping 343 Industries deliver a compelling narrative on both grand and intimate scales.
What?
I don't know.
If we have a shot at getting you back to Infinity, we're taking it.
Halo 4 is a clear step up in the storytelling department, but when it comes to the action, things are more familiar. Halo has always been a shooter built on clear gameplay systems that combine in complex and gratifying ways. The crafty and aggressive enemy AI, the three-pillared arsenal of guns, grenades, and melee, and the environments large and small that provide enough space to maneuver creatively. So it has been, and so it is now, and the new Promethean enemies and weapons fit nicely into the fold. Canine crawlers fire from a distance or swarm up close, while Watchers flit back and forth, offering maddening support to their allies. Knights look fearsome and pack a wallop. So battling Promethean squads is an enjoyable challenge. Though the new weapons fit familiar niches, neat tweaks like the Bolt Shot's shotgun-esque alternate fire and the Scatter Shot's ricocheting bullets make them feel distinct.
You did it! Get back!
The campaign is well-paced and often challenging, and though some Forerunner areas flirt with repetition, the whole endeavor is exciting for the 8 to 10 hours it'll take to finish. Playing cooperatively with up to 4 players is a blast, even if you're replaying a mission, as more Spartans means more freedom for you to try out different tactics, make good use of vehicles, and take time to appreciate the little things. You can also flex your cooperative muscle in a new mode called Spartan Ops.
Ladies and other Spartans, listen up.
Planned as a regular series, each free episode of Spartan Ops comes with a CG animated short depicting life among the Spartan Corps, as well as a number of brief, playable combat scenarios. These skirmishes are over in a matter of minutes, and this brevity makes them feel inconsequential and unsatisfying. Still, it's a flexible and novel way to deliver fresh post-release content, and it'll be interesting to see how the Spartan Ops story builds in the coming weeks and months. On the less cooperative side of things, War Games is the new name for the vaunted competitive multiplayer action that has been a genre standout for more than a decade. The classic deathmatch and objective-based game modes have returned, with a few new additions, tweaks, and gross-as-hell flood mode sword arms, but the big additions here are on the customization side. Quick sidebar here, you're gonna need a few gigabytes of free storage to install both Spartan Ops and War Games. Yes, it's required. For real. Now where were we? Ah yes. Halo has always dictated the weapons available to players in a given match, creating a level playing field from the get-go. But now, in a move reflective of modern shooter trends, Halo 4 introduces loadouts. These consist of familiar things like primary and secondary weapons, grenades, and armor abilities, as well as 2 new attributes that grant small bonuses, like quicker weapon switching, bigger grenade explosions, and quicker shield recharge. You must unlock these items as you level up, though there are always a few fully stocked predetermined loadouts to choose from. In other changes, weapons spawned on the battlefield are now clearly marked, and players who do well can call in their own ordnance drop mid-match. Choosing which of the 3 options to get is an interesting strategic decision that affects how you proceed, and adds another defensive consideration for enemies choosing to engage you. New abilities can help you deal with these variables. Promethean Vision lets you see your enemies' silhouettes, while a hard light shield can save you from imminent death. The online battlefields of Halo 4 are more varied than their predecessors, but none of these changes or additions are powerful enough to destabilize the core balance. This still plays like the competitive Halo that many have come to love over the years, and the new tweaks add a welcome freshness to the action. If you want to avoid or embrace any given element, you can always fire up a custom game and tinker with the battlefield conditions to your heart's content. Options are robust as ever, and exponentially expandable once you dip into the still incredibly powerful Forge level editor. Muck around with friends, tweak existing levels to your liking, craft something new, or simply download the fruits of other people's labor. Forge remains an impressive platform for creative play and thoughtful design.
Victory!
Halo 4 is every bit the massive shooter package that its predecessors were, and it holds the series standard high. The thrilling and emotional return of Master Chief and Cortana in the stirring campaign is the highlight, and it's complemented by the top-notch competitive multiplayer that picks up where Halo Reach left off. The new Spartan Ops may stay a mere sideshow or prove its worth in the weeks to come, but there's no doubting that the next planned Halo trilogy is off to a great start.
I know you've been off the field for a while, Master Chief, but this is a blow-through op. Sending in a recon would just slow us down.
I don't know about you, but I usually like a little more intel with my intel.
We'll make it work.
Halo 5 Guardians is a game about momentum. It's fueled by new ideas and propelled by some of the boldest changes to this storied franchise yet. Some of these ideas fail, but others succeed, and although Halo 5 falters at times, it whisks us through black holes and across war-torn tropical islands at a rapid pace. We can only surrender to its velocity. And with Halo 5, developer 343 Industries comes closer to meeting the many expectations the Halo name carries with it. In fact, some facets of the franchise's shooter formula are at their best here. Guardians introduces new player movement, open level design, and an innovative new multiplayer mode, all to great effect. It also implements a new campaign structure, with 8 playable characters across 2 separate teams, as one chases the other across the universe. On the one hand, you have Blue Team, comprising the Chief and 3 of his oldest Spartan comrades. On the other, you have Team Osiris, 4 soldiers new to the Spartan program, still learning each other's idiosyncrasies. The Spartans' relationships unfold across what amounts to an extended chase sequence. The Master Chief is suspected of war crimes, so Locke and his team are ordered to bring him in. It's a bold thing, turning the face of your franchise into a possible villain, and it sets the stage for what could be an intriguing character study. Sadly, though, it never delivers. Halo 5 pulls us through this chase as it tries to tell a story about responsibility, the nature of artificial intelligence, and the fall of one's idols. But while there might be a compelling story to tell here, 343 doesn't make use of the opportunities before it. Cutscenes fade to black before they feel finished, character motivations shift on a whim. Halo 5 Guardians spans several beautiful worlds, with chromatic mushroom fields and labyrinthine cave networks, but I seldom knew why I was there. There are also combat-free environments in Halo 5's campaign, in which you explore small, self-contained areas before embarking on the next mission. There are also audio logs that, at their best, add backstory to Halo 5's world. At their worst, though, they don't fit. They're added weight to an already disjointed plot. The exploration-based areas and diary entries only serve to slow down the otherwise steady sprint through Halo 5's worlds. But in the end, my frustration with the campaign's narrative was offset by how good the gameplay feels. 343 has added several abilities to the usual Spartan skill set, granting new options to the already tight controls. You can ground pound unsuspecting enemies from above, You can dash to one side to avoid that rocket barreling past your team. Now more than ever, I actually feel like a super soldier. That 343 has introduced these drastic changes to the formula, while still maintaining that responsive Halo feel, is admirable. As a Halo veteran, this feels like I remember, but also adds another layer of nuance to my muscle memory. Halo 5 also features open-ended mission layouts. Gone are the linear pathways of the series past. These new environments function more as arenas, with varying elevations and avenues of approach. There are also hidden weapon stashes and vehicle depots, and if you don't mind the erratic narrative, these missions are worth replaying just to see them unfold differently a second time. In the end, Halo 5 is best played cooperatively, with 3 other friends. The ability to split into 2 teams, cover each other from different angles, and utilize every weapon possible leads to a wide array of emergent gameplay situations. This style of play also erases the weight of the ally AI, which fills any spots devoid of a human player. To be fair, the AI performs well at times. After pointing out a priority enemy target, for example, my artificial teammates are quick to focus their fire. But other times, the AI is abysmal. Halo 5 grants you a second chance before forcing a respawn, allowing your teammates to revive your dying character. But without a human touch, this situation devolves into a train of suicide missions as the AI rushes into certain death, one by one. But that's the campaign. Now, there's the multiplayer. And here, Halo 5 excels. In fact, this is the best shape Halo's multiplayer has ever taken. The classic Halo playlists, such as Slayer, Capture the Flag, and fan-favorite SWAT, all eschew the modern multiplayer progression system introduced with Halo 4. Now, instead of earning new weapon options a la Call of Duty, Halo 5 returns to form with universal weapon loadouts, and by scattering power weapons throughout each map, delivers a welcome departure from the tedious unlock system of its predecessor. While Arena feels great and captures the essence of what makes Halo multiplayer compelling, it's the new Warzone mode that departs from its franchise tradition several times over. It takes inspiration from the MOBA genre, combining player versus player tactics with player versus environment combat, and it's one of the best new ideas in not just this series, but the shooter genre in general. Warzone spans huge maps, from lush jungles to barren Arctic landscapes. Each team has a plethora of options laid out before it, from capturing neutral zones, to killing enemy players, to defeating AI combatants. Matches are won by accruing points, and each kill, each zone capture, each slain mini-boss contributes to that total. Teams must choose where to strike and when to do so. Warzone is brilliant because, as with the rest of Halo 5, there is momentum here, but this is a force that shifts from side to side within each match. Warzone isn't so much about consistency, it's about adaptability, and the team that can roll with the punches and punch back at the right moments will have the upper hand. After ranking up and achieving certain accolades through Halo 5's multiplayer modes, you'll earn requisition points. These act as currency for 3 tiers of item packs, each containing random weapon unlocks, vehicle orders, and aesthetic items. And although they're random, they still succeed in changing the way you play based on the equipment available. By gaining energy throughout each match, you burn through cards, thereby granting weapons and vehicles to aid in the battle. These can turn the tide of certain skirmishes, allowing you to defeat certain bosses or take certain capture zones when others can't. The requisition system is a welcome departure from Halo 4's progression system, and I think it might be the thing to keep me coming back weeks after Halo 5 releases. In some ways, Halo 5 is the boldest Halo yet. The franchise's multiplayer is at its peak, with well-designed maps and balanced player combat. But then there's the campaign, which introduces fluid new movement and open level design, yet it can't tell a dynamic story to match. There are signs of a phenomenal shooter here, but certain narrative aspects feel underdeveloped, and they hold the franchise's newest sequel back from true excellence. Like Spartan Locke and his team, 343 is chasing after something bigger than itself, and with Halo 5 Guardians, it comes close. Now, if only it could reach out its arm and take hold.
Party's over. You belong to me.
Satisfactory.
Special delivery. betrayal